we'll call the meeting to order. We'll stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, welcome everybody. Sylvia, roll call.
Mayor Mays is absent tonight. Council President Rosner.
Here.
Councilor Browse. Here. Councilor Garland.
Here.
Councilor Young. Here. Councilor Griffin.
Here.
Councilor Scott.
I am here.
Thank you.
All right, next on the agenda is approval of the agenda.
I move we approve the agenda.
Second. All right, any discussion? No? All those in favor?
Do we need to say amended agenda? No?
No, we're good.
Okay.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The agenda is approved. All right, and then on the consent agenda tonight, we have 4 items. A is approval of the April 16, 2019 City Council minutes. B is Resolution 2019-038, appointing Rick, and I apologize, Rick, if you're here, Waidola, sorry about that. Great. To the Sherwood Planning Commission. Resolution 2019-039, appointing members to the Comprehensive Plan Project Advisory Team. And Resolution 2019-041, appointing representative signature certifier for USDA Reconnect program. And for those that don't know, that's so we can qualify for some federal grants. Anyways, do I have a motion?
I move to approve consent.
Second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Consent agenda is approved. Okay, citizen comments. All right. And Sylvia, none of these are for the hearing?
I've separated those.
You separated those. Okay, great. Julie Nader. Hi, Julie. How are you doing today?
I'm good, thanks.
Excellent. I noticed you put in 3 different requests, or 2? Maybe I miscounted. You're correct.
Copies, that's why.
That's right. 2 on 2 different subjects. So normally we do 4 minutes, but
I can do it in 4 minutes.
awesome. Thank
You
you.
want both at once?
Yeah, you can go ahead and
Okay.
just do each. Thank you.
First, I want to thank all of you for working for Sherwood as unpaid servants. You really do an excellent job. I'm a resident of Woodhaven in Sherwood, and this has to do with Trader Joe's. I stopped at the customer service desk and asked, how can we get Trader Joe's in Sherwood? And he said, first of all, he's a Sherwood resident. Second of all, we should just email corporate. So I sent an email to everybody I knew. And I'm hoping that other people will do the same because I think it does make a difference. And the email address, of course, is traderjoes.com. So I think if you and anybody else you know who lives here did an email, that would be excellent. We really need it. I think it'd be an asset. And the other issue, these are benign things. You don't have to get nervous. This has to do with benches. Woodhaven has a lot of wonderful trails. And I had contacted Craig Sheldon about the possibilities of benches on the trails because as we get older, and even for younger children, we need benches often. So I'm thinking, first of all, I asked Craig for the background. Maybe this is tried before. Maybe he knows all the ins and outs of it. I know that the president of the Homeowners Association is completely on board with this. And of course, it's city-maintained trails, so therefore the city has to agree to this. And I wanted to know the cost of them. I think they would be a very big asset to the community. They could be anchored so that nobody would take them away, which happens here. Anyway, I just think it would be a way to encourage the use of the trails, and certainly it would be an enjoyable respite for people who walk the trails. Do you have any questions of me?
I have a question for Joe. So Boy Scouts often do Eagle Scout projects. Is something like that a project that could possibly be done?
Yes, certainly. Actually, Chief Growth just whispered in my ear, hey, that could be a great scout project. So
Okay.
that's something we can follow up in. And I will follow up with our Public Works Director, who's not here tonight, to find out how we can make something like that happen potentially. Julia has some input
Well,
here
I was
as
just going to add that as part of the Cedar Creek Trail project, and it looks like Kristen may have stepped out.
She had to step out. So.
But she and I have been discussing, and probably at some point in the near future, we'll have a Parks Board discussion about adopt-a benches or something like that on both Cedar Creek Trail, but other trails. I mean, there has to be a policy and a program, and kind of making sure that we're able to manage it. But it is something that staff has talked about and would be bringing to council when we have something that's ripe enough to bring to you.
Very cool.
Can I add something? Sure. I think there are other groups in town, civic groups, who could well be involved in this, and I see it as an ongoing thing, not a one-time expense, but as a way to donate a bench for a memorial person, whatever, club, group. I think it can be an ongoing effort. I wouldn't expect it to be done overnight.
Well, and to that point, my fellow Rotarian Councilor Browse just sent me a little note here saying we can talk about this at the Rotary Club too. That would be a
Exactly,
great project
yes.
for them.
But I do have a question for you. How many, if you had a request for a number of benches, how many benches would you like? You have a drawing. Awesome. That's even better.
But it depends on how long they are. I would think, it'd have to be a survey done and see what the need might be. The one I particularly use is long, and it needs a bench.
Okay.
So I appreciate your
Awesome.
listening.
Well,
Thank you so
thanks
much.
for the
It's a
idea.
wonderful idea. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. And I think that was it for citizen comments.
One more about
Is there one more? Did I miss?
legislation, I think.
Let's see here. Oh, you're right. Haley Hardcastle. Hi, Haley.
Hi.
How are you doing today?
Good, thanks.
Good. Excellent.
So good afternoon. My name is Haley Hardcastle. I'm a senior at Sherwood High School. I'm also the former president of the Oregon Association of Student Councils. And I was asked here today actually by Councilor Garland to talk about another group that I'm involved in called Students for a Healthy Oregon, and one of our critical bills that we're working on, which is House Bill 2191. So nearly a year ago, I helped form Students for a Healthy Oregon, and I brought together a collection of students from all over Oregon, and we spoke to hundreds of students about how to address the rising mental health challenges in our schools. And as regular high schoolers do, we decided on comprehensive legislative action. And so we worked with Jessica Adamson, who is actually a school board member here and a lobbyist, and we composed House Bill 2191. So this bill would edit the language in the Oregon's absence policy to include mental health as a reason for an excused absence, just as physical illness does. And the bill has actually been informed by a lot of mental health professionals. It's sponsored by Providence Healthcare and NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness. And it was overwhelmingly the most suggested idea from all the hundreds of students that we've spoken to. This bill is important because it would validate the mental health struggles that so many students, even some here in Sherwood, as we know, are dealing with every day. Suicide, you may not know, is the second leading cause of death for children ages 10 to 24 in Oregon. And mental illness is something that should absolutely be treated just the same as physical illness because it is just as debilitating and deadly. The whole idea behind this bill is that sometimes a day off is the difference between making it a whole lot worse and a whole lot better. And most importantly, I believe in this bill because it's to start the conversation between parents and students and also to help schools identify those students who are struggling. Because in reality, as a high schooler, I know that many, many students miss school for mental health related issues anyways, but they either fake a physical illness or they have their parents lie for them. This bill would allow schools to monitor how many days a student has missed for this reason, and it would hopefully deter many students from just cutting class using this as an excuse because After a student has missed too many days for a mental health related reason, the school could refer them to a school counselor. So this would help us catch those students who we wouldn't know why they would be missing school otherwise. The truth is there has and always will be students that cut class, but the students who are actually experiencing mental health challenges need and deserve this bill to be recognized the same way that a student with a cold or fever would. This bill also instills an important concept in our students about how to take care of themselves and how to treat those with mental illnesses. And although Sherwood has a fairly lenient absence policy, most of the times you can call and you don't exactly need to give a reason as long as you have a parent. A lot of districts around us don't, and I believe that this would help them a lot. And our bill has actually already been passed through the House, and it's actually scheduled for a work session tomorrow with the Senate Education Committee, and it'll be voted on next week. And I just believe that it's time to take the necessary steps to help protect the well-being of our students. I'm mainly here tonight just to educate you guys about House Bill 2191 and ask you to contact your senator, let them know to support it, because this is something that us students really need. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I just have a comment because that was really interesting. I didn't realize if my son or daughter had a mental health issue, I would just call them in sick. To me, it's no different than being sick with it, and I don't feel I'm lying as a parent.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, so I didn't. Thanks for bringing that to our attention. 'Cause
Yeah, absolutely.
I feel like I should be able to call my child in sick regardless of what their
And there are
sickness
many parents who don't believe in like mental illness and things like this, so that would start the conversation, you know, for students who feel like they need to pretend like they're physically ill.
Thank you so much. It's so exciting to see a high school student involved in the
Thank you.
legislative process.
Yeah.
So
thank you for
Haley,
coming, Haley.
what's the outlook for the bill in Salem?
It's looking good.
Feeling good about it? Good.
Yeah, we passed, I think, we had 21 yes votes in the House and, or one of the committees in the House, but we had a lot of support in the House, and the Senate should actually be pretty easy. And we're also looking to introduce 2 bills increasing funding for overall school mental health resources in the next legislative session. So look out for Students for Healthy Oregon.
And Haley, if I'm not mistaken, you have a website out there where you have
do.
a form that you can just, it's very easy to fill out, takes a minute or two.
Yeah.
And it sends a letter to our representatives, our local representatives.
Our website is actually kind of hard to reach, but we have a Facebook page, Students for Healthy Oregon, and it's linked on there.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for coming.
Well needed and impressive. Thank you.
All right. So we're on to presentations. First one is recognition of Sherwood Public Library Team Lab graduate. Is Precious here tonight? She's not here tonight. I would love to have her here for this. If
Yeah,
everyone
we can
agrees. Let's push this.
reschedule 2 weeks from tonight on the 21st when she's here. That would be my
That'd be
recommendation.
great. Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, we'd love to have her here for that, so that's perfect, thanks. All right, next item is recognition of retiring TVF&R Chief Michael Dyke and introduction of our new chief. Thanks for coming out tonight.
Thanks for having us. Good evening, counselors. My name is Derek Weiss, Assistant Chief with Tualatin Valley Fire and Rescue, and it wasn't long ago that I was here to present our State of the District. It's my pleasure to be able to accompany Chief Dyke around to all of our cities and counties that we serve one final time to say hello and goodbye to those that we've served alongside for the better part of 10 years now. And what you may know is that Chief Dyke is retiring June 30th of this year, but we're also losing our CFO, who has been with us for 30 years. Deborah Grabler has been with Tualatin Valley Fire and Rescue for 30 years. And so we're losing her. So what we did is we already did a process that went literally coast to coast across the United States and found a very capable CFO in Tim Collier, who comes to us from Metro. So it's had 10 years or so with Metro and City of Hillsborough, I think, before that. Well-regarded, very talented. Look forward to him serving with the leadership team in the near future. But we have 2 leaving right away, but I'm here to also tell you that succession planning is going to be at the top of our list for the coming years. We have 45 people that are eligible to retire today. We're going to have another 20 next year, I think 20 the year after that, and 20 the year after that. So we're looking at 100 some people eligible to retire in a few short years. So we're always looking for the next level, and one of the things that I was tasked with was taking a look at how do we do succession planning, how do we motivate people to move up the ranks. I've had 25 years with the organization, but you don't always get the chance to move up even in 25 years. So how do we get people to take that next step and move forward? We have a lot of talented people with the organization that we want to move ahead. So we did some minor changes in organizational structure. When you have a change in leadership, it's an opportunity to evaluate how you've been doing things. So we made a few changes. Most of them don't affect the line and certainly not the service that you receive. But we're recommitted and focused to our cities and our partners. Already had meetings with Sherwood PD and looking forward to those partnerships in the future. Now, he doesn't like it when people talk about him, but I have the mic. And so I'm going to share one thing, one great thing, because Chief Dyke has been across the country. He has given more, not only to the Oregon Fire Service, TVFNR, but nationally. He's done things that have changed laws across the country and helped fire departments provide service. Locally, if you've heard of Pulse Point, Chief Dyke was the one that brought Pulse Point to Oregon. And we were talking earlier, I remember you talking earlier about seconds count in a cardiac event. And Pulse Point alerts people to respond in public places to a cardiac event. But he took it one step further. And as you may know, in the city of Sherwood, there's a lot of TVFR employees that live here. Well, TVFR employees now can be tapped on their Pulse Point activation and actually respond to houses, to residences, if they live within a quarter mile. So I keep changing what I give you credit for, but tonight that's it because I think it means a lot to the city of Sherwood. And now I must not talk anymore.
That's my turn. Well, good evening to all the council, and thank you for the opportunity to come back in front of you one last time in my final 55 days as your fire chief.
Not counting.
I can neither confirm nor deny I have an app that tells me how many days. But I did not want to leave without saying thank you. Thank you to the mayor council that I've had the greatest opportunity to work with, the city manager and the police chief who have just been an absolute blessing for me. The partnership that we have with the city, both on public safety issues or just issues of livability in general, have been fantastic for me. And it's truly been an honor to serve as your fire chief for the last 10 years. 33 years in the fire service has just been a phenomenal career for me and my family, and I just have truly enjoyed the community that we serve and all of you in the partnership of really just trying to make a great place for people to live. So we went through, other than in a process to get a replacement for our chief financial officer, we went through an extensive process to find my replacement. I worked with our board of directors for quite some time to kind of work up to that point when we launched our process. I will say that Chief Weiss went through an extensive process with all the other candidates, and they truly selected the best chief executive to replace me. He has a great plan moving forward, as he's already stated, to really refocus and get really well connected with all of our communities and our cities. He has a great team. I'm excited for the organization. I'm excited for you. I live in the district, so I'm invested too. I'll keep my eye on him. But I just wanted to thank you and thank you for letting us come before you tonight and just say thanks for all you've done for me and the organization. It's truly been an honor, and I'm excited for all of our collective future. So, thank you.
Well, thank you very much, and I can't say how much we appreciate. I think I'm speaking for the whole council. In fact, I think I'm positive of that, all the hard work that you've put in your tenure as the chief here in town. And I have to say, you have great staff. Your staff has been to my house. That's another story for another day, but they were awesome and did a great job, and I really appreciate it. So thank you.
So what's next?
My wife has some ideas. I'm not retiring. I'm really intrigued by Trader Joe's. But I really want to stay involved in the community and public safety. But I really like living here, and I live just up the road. And so just finding something to spend maybe a little bit more time or have a few fewer interruptions with my family. but continue to give back and make sure that when people have a bad day, it can turn out as positive as possible.
Sherwood Rotary is always looking for new members. We can do that, yeah.
Council President,
Yes,
if I may,
you may.
I would be remiss if I didn't jump in here. Chief Dyke has been, it seems really loud, Mike, has been the chief for all but the smallest initial of my tenure as chief. And I just can't say how much I've appreciated his partnership and friendship. And it's true, we don't talk a lot about the things that he does or the things we work on together, but I can tell you that there's been lots of meetings where we've been discussing some pretty high strategic things for the betterment of Sherwood and the fire district. And he's just always been a consummate professional and a very collaborative partner. And I just, yeah, there's probably no chance in me trying to get you to stay, but I'm excited to work with, I know, he's right, yeah, but that's where I'm going now. Obviously excited to work with Chief Weiss, it'll be great. But Mike, you've just been a great friend, and on a personal side, your folks have been to my house on numerous occasions, and I just can't express, how much that means. And you know what I'm talking about. But anyway, so I just had to point that, and I want to give you a Chiefs coin as a recognition. It's just a small token, but hopefully it'll be something you can remember us by.
Council President, I have one additional thing.
Yes, go ahead, Joe.
First, I don't have a city manager coin. Maybe I need to get those. Maybe I should get those. Can we get those in the budget? You mentioned Pulse Point, and there's a lot of things that happened during your tenure, but as someone who has worked in local government for many, many years, one of the things that Chief Dyke really worked hard on, and you would love this, Council President Rosner, is because he's a data guy, if you haven't figured that out. He really helped local governments throughout Oregon and at the League of Oregon Cities trying to figure out what to do with our property tax system and how our property tax system works effectively and not so effectively. And to have a fire chief of a special district work with cities and counties and others, because we don't always necessarily see eye to eye. Most of the time we do, but he's done a tremendous job kind of behind the scenes and also in front, working with us, educating us how to address this problem, which still hasn't been fixed. But I want to acknowledge that work that you've done, because that's been yeoman's work over the years. And you're an expert in understanding how this system works, which is a very crazy system. So we may tap into that still, even though you're retired. So I want to acknowledge that as well. So thank you.
Sure. Thanks, guys. All right. So next up is a proclamation, National Police Week. I have some reading to do. Anyways, it is National Police Week, May 12th through the 18th. So I'm going to go ahead and read this proclamation for everyone. A proclamation, National Police Week, May 12th through the 18th, 2019, and May 15th, 2019 is National Peace Officers Memorial Day. Whereas the Congress and the President of the United States has designated the week of May 12th through the May 18th as National Police Week, and whereas the men and women of the Sherwood Police Department provide a vital public service by safeguarding the rights and freedoms of Sherwood community, and where it is important that all citizens know and understand the duties, responsibilities, hazards, and sacrifices of their police department, and that members of our police department recognize their duty to serve the people by safeguarding life and property, protecting them against violence and disorder, and protecting the innocent against deception and the weak against oppression. And whereas the safety of our citizens is the foremost goal of local and state and national governments, and where the ability to exercise the rights and freedoms as set forth by our forefathers depend upon law and order. And whereas the law enforcement is one of the few chosen professions that require the willingness to lay down one's life to protect others. And whereas the daily performance of the police officer's normal duty is dangerous, stress-filled, often unappreciated, and requires a person with a supportive family. And now, therefore, be it resolved that we, the Sherwood City Council, do hereby proclaim May 12th through the 18th, 2019 as National Police Week, and May 15th, 2019 as National Peace Officers Day in Sherwood, and urge all citizens to recognize and thank law enforcement for their dedicated service they provide. Anybody want to say anything? Chief?
Thank you.
Thank you, Council President. Means an awful lot. And today, in fact, I'm in dress uniform because I was at attendance at the Oregon State Law Enforcement Memorial Service at the Police Academy in Salem. So they always have that the week before National Police Week to not create any conflicts for folks that might be involved in both. So if you have not gone, some of you have. I know Joe has been there. It is worth attending, and make sure to get the dates for you next year. But it's usually the first week in May or the week right before National Police Week. But it's very moving. So thank you.
All right. Thanks, Chief. All right, we have another proclamation. Proclamation National Public Works Week. Proclamation National Public Work Week, May 19th through the 25th, 2019. Whereas public work services are important to health, safety, and the well-being of Sherwood citizens, and whereas these services can only be provided through dedicated public works professionals, including government and private sector employees who oversee water distribution, water treatment, sewer systems, equipment services, public property, solid waste, and recycling services, city streets and parks maintenance, and I'm sure there's a lot more on that list. Whereas these employees are the city's silent heroes who guarantee that these essential services are always working, and whereas the support and understanding of informed citizenry is vital to the efficient operation of the public works system, and whereas the year 2019 marks the 59th annual National Public Works Week sponsored by the American Public Works Associations. Now, therefore, be it resolved that we, the Sherwood City Council, do hereby proclaim May 19th through the 25th, 2019 is National Public Work Week in Sherwood, and urge all citizens to recognize and thank public work employees for their dedicated service they provide. And I'll just add, we live in a great community. We have great roads and streets, and it's kind of like telephone service. You just expect it to work, but a lot of work goes into that, and you don't have to drive too far into other communities to see a difference. And our public works staff does a great job. Anything else? No? All right. So we're on to new business. We have a resolution, 2019-040, call for a federal study regarding health and safety of 5G technology. Josh.
Thank you, Council President. So as you and the Council are aware, Sherwood citizens and others have expressed some concerns about 5G cell phone technology, potential health effects and safety effects of that, and the dearth of data on that subject. As you're also aware, federal law preempts the city and state from regulating this technology on the basis of health concerns. So this resolution is modeled after a resolution that was recently passed by the City of Portland, and it calls on the FCC and other related federal agencies to conduct those studies and to publicize them. If you have any questions, I'm happy to try to answer them.
Any questions from council?
I don't have any questions, but I appreciate council being willing to look at this. I know I brought it of interest when the Portland did this, and I just think there's some studies that need to be done because there haven't been any, and not that maybe they'll listen to little old city of Sherwood. Who knows? But at least we can get our voice heard.
Yeah, it's rather shocking how little studies have been done on this subject and the studies that have been done. I think I was reading, or some of it dates back to the 1990s. Is that correct?
My understanding is the most recent report was based on data that was largely from the 1990s. That's correct. Which, of course, was not 5G technology or even 4G technology. It's probably 2G and 3G technology. Right.
Or wired 30-foot cord so I could talk in my bedroom technology. Okay, great. Any more discussion or questions from council? All right. Do I have a motion?
Make a motion to approve Resolution 2019-040, calling for the federal study regarding the health and safety of 5G technology.
Second.
Great. Any discussion on the motion? No? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. All right, under our next business, we have a public hearing related to right-of-way permits. Sylvia?
The Sherwood City Council will hold a public hearing this evening to hear testimony on ordinance 2019-004, amending Sherwood Municipal Code, Chapter 12.02, relating to right-of-way permits. This is the first reading on this ordinance. The public hearing this evening will be conducted as follows. Staff will present a staff report. Questions, if any, by the council for staff. We will then receive any written testimony. We will then open the public hearing for testimony, and the time will be limited to 4 minutes per person. Any interested person may present testimony. We will then close the public hearing. No other comments will be heard from the public. Final comments by staff. Questions of staff, if any, by the council. Discussion by the council. This is the first hearing before the City Council on this item. Generally, the council will hold 2 hearings prior to making a decision. A second hearing on this item is currently scheduled for the May 21st meeting. However, in accordance with the city charter, the council reserves the right to make a decision at the close of this hearing by a unanimous vote of all sitting council members. If you wish to speak, please fill out a testimony form and submit it to the city recorder. The council president will recognize people wishing to speak, and any questions should be addressed through the council president. When you come forward, please state your name and address for the record, as this hearing will be recorded, and limit your comments to 4 minutes.
Great. So turn it over to Julia.
As Sylvia mentioned, this is the first reading of the proposed changes, and we have a second hearing scheduled for a hearing and adoption on May 21st, if that's what council chooses. Just a reminder in the staff report, the changes are proposed for 3 primary reasons. The first is clean up and to kind of just clarify some things. It's been quite a while since the right-of-way permit section was created, and staff that administer it just were recommending some cleanup. We also are proposing to provide a process to allow the temporary use of the right-of-way to address issues and needs that have come up over the years, primarily related to construction activities where there isn't room on the property, temporary pods type of things, to allow the ability for us to review and regulate those rather than it just sort of being a no man's land these days. And then the primary reason, though, and what sort of, because we were doing this, the third piece anyways, that's what allowed us to look at the clarification and the cleanup, is to provide clarity and a process for approval of construction within the right-of-way for private facilities or on public facilities, private utilities on public facilities, primarily related to the small wireless facilities. We presented draft changes at a work session to council on April 16th in a work session. Since that meeting, we did refine the proposed changes a little bit more, primarily adding detail on bonding requirements. And then we also added a section about removal of facilities within the right-of-way, and that was based on the LOC model code. That's at the very end of the proposed changes. Today, we and you received comments from 3 individuals, one representing AT&T, one representing Verizon, and one representing the Home Builders Association. I'm going to go through and summarize what we heard in those comments and give you a little bit of a response where we feel a response is warranted or necessary. The first one is a desire to change the permit expiration date from 90 days to 6 months. After looking at that and talking with Bob Galati, the city engineer, who sort of oversees the right-of-way permit process, we don't believe that is necessary. Right now, you have 60 days to start construction and then 90 days to complete construction after it's started. And having permits open for 6 months after construction just would become a very burdensome for staff to track and maintain those over time. So we are recommending that we not do that. In addition, we're not unreasonable. If someone is starting construction and you're at that 90-day period, it's not like we're going to just expire the permit and make you start over. We will work with people as we are able. Another comment was recommending that we define the small wireless facility in the code rather than just referencing the FCC regulations. And Josh and I talked about that this afternoon and recommend not doing that because the FCC regulations are subject to change and we don't want to have to modify our code to be in sync with the FCC regulations if they change. Third set of comments was recommending that we define private versus public facilities, and we actually agree with that. And so we're actually recommending that we add some definitions to the proposed changes. And I just did a brief memo. I'm going to read it so that everybody in the audience can see this, but this way council has it in front of you as well. We are proposing to add a definition for public facilities that says facilities owned and operated by the city of Sherwood. Private facilities are facilities owned and operated by an entity other than the city of Sherwood. So pretty straightforward of what a private facility versus a public facility is. So we're proposing to add those definitions to make that clear. There was a question about there's a requirement that the small wireless facilities provide GIS data annually, and was asking whether or not that was something that's required of all utilities. I checked with Bob to see kind of what engineering does and how that's done, and really we get that GIS data with public improvements and the as-builts, and so we do have GIS data of assets essentially, and what his thought was that rather than making the wireless facility provide it with every single right-of-way permit, asking them to do it on an annual basis so that we're not just constantly getting inundated with that. That said, I think what we would recommend is just to come back to you guys on that after we've had a chance to talk a little bit more with the utility providers to make sure that we're on the same page, and maybe we need to finesse that wording a little bit more or make that more clear. There was also a desire for clarification or confirmation that small wireless facilities could be located within the public utility easement, with the rationale from the utilities that for the wireless facilities that other utilities are permitted within the utility easement. So we actually are proposing language changes to make it clear, because the utility easement is really primarily for underground utilities. It's not just for anything. And we did talk with Bob about, well, are there light poles and things like that in the utility easements? And generally, no, they're not. And we don't necessarily want to be putting them in the utility easements. They're primarily in the right of way. So the other proposed language that we provided was essentially to change section 12.02.030. I've got 0030, which is incorrect. Point B3 to read. Construction within a public utility easement is prohibited with the exception of easily movable structures such as fences or landscaping elements constructed by the abutting property owner, underground utilities, and minor appurtenances necessary to serve underground utilities and not exceeding 2 feet by 2 feet by 2 feet, essentially the utility boxes that you see. And then continuing with no other permanent structures shall be permitted to be constructed within a public utility easement, and then continuing on as it was originally written. So if council is supportive of that, we would make changes prior to coming back to you on May 21st with those, but we wanted to make sure that you saw those. Another comment actually from the the Homeowners Association was wanting confirmation on whether private development is responsible for relocating private facilities if it's part of a public improvement project. And this is really a policy decision, and I'm going to turn it over to Josh to talk a little bit more about that.
I'll talk about that briefly. I do anticipate that you'll probably receive some comments from various sides of that issue this evening, so I won't talk about it in too much depth until after we hear those. But the important thing I want to draw your attention to is that our existing code does require that the owner of the facility within the right-of-way already is responsible for those relocation costs, with an exception that's required by state law that says we're not prohibiting them from seeking reimbursement for those relocation costs when permitted by law. So this isn't really requesting a shift in that existing paradigm. The question really is, when the city is constructing a public improvement, clearly we don't want the city to be responsible for the cost of relocation. That's already the case. The question I think that's being raised is when it's a private development that is causing a relocation of utility facilities within the right-of-way, should the utility be responsible for those relocation costs? Should the private developer be responsible for those relocation costs? So I'm sure you'll hear some advocacy on both sides of that issue.
So that is the summary of our proposal, and comments that you have received today. Like as Josh said, I'm sure you'll hear those in testimony as well. But I'm happy to answer any questions that you have before you open the public hearing.
Questions for staff?
Just a thank you. I don't have a question, but thank you for putting a synopsis and all that and your recommendations. I appreciate it.
I had all those notes, and that's exactly what I was going to ask you to clarify all those letters we got. So we're one step ahead of us.
I only have one question. And Josh, I did call you back today, so I called Josh a lot today with questions. On the definition of public facility versus private facility, and defining public facility as a facility owned and operated by the city of Sherwood, how would stormwater and clean water services facilities fall into that?
So my understanding from talking with Bob this afternoon is that the city actually owns all of those facilities that are within the city boundaries. So they're not any of these public facilities in the right-of-way that are owned by anyone other than the city of Sherwood.
And operated by?
Owned and operated by.
Okay.
And then I also did actually contact him as I was doing this, asking about what about Tualatin Sherwood Road and 99W, and basically these definitions apply to the right-of-way permits. We don't issue right-of-way permits on roads that aren't ours, and so when essentially these definitions apply to this section, and it wouldn't.
So within city streets.
Within city
Correct. Yes, within the city boundaries and city streets. Right.
Okay. Great. That's all I have. So I guess we'll open the public hearing. All right. Ezra Hammer, did I pronounce that right? Excellent.
Good evening, Council President and councilors. My name is Ezra Hammer with the Home Builders Association of Metropolitan Portland. We represent approximately 1,400 businesses and tens of thousands of women and men that work in the home building and remodeling industries throughout the region. We want to thank staff for taking the time to update the right-of-way permit ordinance. Certainly it's timely given the recent ruling by the FCC, and we're anticipating a proliferation of small cell facilities throughout the region as that technology becomes more and more common with service providers. Like the city, home builders are often tasked with completing public works improvements in the public right-of-way, oftentimes pursuant to city conditions of approval, which are part of letters of approval for new housing projects. As highlighted in a recent Washington County white paper on the subject matter, the cost of relocating a private utility can range anywhere from $5,000 to several $100,000, depending on the infrastructure and type of pole. And the timeline can range anywhere from several months to over a year, depending on how quickly a service provider is willing to engage in the relocation process or provide the necessary information to effectuate the relocation. Absent city direction otherwise, these costs are oftentimes borne by the home builders, regardless of the fact that they're not the owners of the infrastructure, nor the ones seeking to do the work in the right-of-way in the first place. That necessarily translates to higher housing costs. And again, if you're dealing with smaller infill projects, adding several hundred thousands of dollars to a project will translate to tens of thousands of dollars increases to new homes. So given those high costs, we're really thankful that staff included section 1202.040A, the relocation section. It includes two important components. One, a timing requirement, whereby a third party would need to act within 30 days once notified by the city that relocation is required, and two, placing the cost equitably on the owner of that infrastructure to begin with, rather than shifting that to home builders. That being said, we would appreciate additional language that clarifies or specifies that these requirements need to occur regardless of who's actually conducting the work in the right-of-way. So whether it's the city conducting the work or a third party, if directed by the city, we would ask that that section be clarified to ensure that the requirements apply in both instances. Absent this, we're concerned that third parties will continue to attempt to pass those costs along to the end users, and again, those will translate to higher housing costs throughout the city. Additionally, we ask that you develop or ask staff to develop a system whereby the city would direct a third-party applicant or a third-party right-of-way permit holder to conduct the necessary relocation once conditions of approval have been issued for a housing project. It's important that that direction come from the city so that there's clarity with regards to timing and the cost requirements. So again, thank you for your time tonight, and thank you, staff, for engaging in this update.
Thank you. All right. Karen Minsky, did I get that right? Excellent. Thanks.
Good evening, Council President Rosner and councilors. My name is Karen Minsky. I'm appearing tonight on behalf of AT&T. Thank you for the opportunity to provide comments on Ordinance 2019-004, amending Chapter 12.02 of the Sherwood Municipal Code. Oh, sure.
Public that's watching. Thanks.
Thanks.
I also want to thank staff and the council for it's quite loud, for all the work that's gone into this proposed amendment to the Sherwood Municipal Code. A lot of work has gone into it that is beneficial for small wireless facilities, and for the most part, we're in support of the changes. There's only a couple items that we had commented on, and I believe it's Julia did address most of them. One of the items that we commented on that I did not hear Julia comment on was that Chapter 12.02 has some overlapping and inconsistencies with Chapter 12.16, which is the chapter on right-of-way licenses. And so in Chapter 12.16, for small wireless facilities, will be required to obtain a right-of-way license, and in addition, we'll need to get the right-of-way construction permit under the 12.02 amended code. That's consistent with what other cities and jurisdictions do, but what the license does, that chapter does include quite a few restrictions and limitations, and how to approach when there's relocation and other items like insurance. I'm just trying to think of some off the top of my head, termination, revocation, that also are now being covered by Section 12.02. So there's inconsistency and overlapping in those two chapters that we'd like staff to take another look at and make sure that if they do need to be said in both places, that it's easy to understand that one is specific about the construction and one is specific about the long-term license. Or if not, that one controls over the other. One other item that we pointed out today in our letter or written comments was that the time period that we need to start construction after our permit is issued, which is 60 days, and the time period after which we have to complete construction, which is 90 days after commencement. Those time periods are fairly short for our industry. There's a lot of moving parts and a lot of people and vendors that need to get in place to make one of these facilities work. To install it, to make sure the power is working, the fiber is working, everything on it's working. And it's a 60-day window from commencement of installation of the facility and then another 90-day window after. Those are fairly short periods of time for us. We propose 6 months for starting the construction and 6 months after construction is started so that we can make sure that all the moving parts are completed accurately, and make sure that they are in compliance with all the requirements that the city is going to require, the pole owner is going to require, and any other utility that we're going to be using, fiber, electricity. And those are the extent of the comments that I'd like to share. Thank you again for the opportunity to provide comment on your amended code, and if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them for you.
Thanks, Karen. And got one more, Steve Koon. I think I got that one right. Excellent.
Mr. Wydola's name was very difficult.
Yeah.
Good evening, Council President and councilors. My name is Steve Koon, and I work for Verizon Wireless in the Network Engineering Group. My office is 19950 Northwest Tannisbourne Drive in Hillsborough. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak tonight about small cells in the right-of-way and the right-of-way permits. While Verizon generally supports the process being proposed, we do have a few targeted concerns, and those concerns were provided today, and also a red line to the council. The first part, the section 12.02.020D2 states that a permit shall automatically expire 90 days after the work commences. And as Ms. Minsky also said, this limit's not workable for most situations in small cells and in the wireless field. Fiber and power connections and make-ready work, if a new pole needs, a replacement pole needs to be replaced, these are all things that add time to what we're trying to do. So we had stated that 6 months was our preferred on this one. If it's going to stay at 90 days, and as staff said, they don't think it's necessary because they will work with us as they are able, I guess I would suggest we put something in the code like, for instance, 90-day extensions is needed. I know that part of this code is for people that come and they might never do the work, or they reserve a pole and it takes them a couple of years, right? So I know that's a problem for y'all, but we intend on starting work right away when we get a permit. And so there needs to be something for the good actors too, if we need more time. Section 12.02.030B3 limits structures in the utility easement to public utilities and the city. And I guess in my mind it's unclear, and now it's clear, I guess, the city code, that wireless providers are not a public utility. And if so, the FCC order requires regulations for small wireless facilities be no more burdensome than those applied to other similar types of infrastructure deployments. To the extent the city or public utility can place infrastructure in utility easements, small wireless facilities should also be permitted. Section 12.02030C1 is criteria for right-of-way use permits, and that states the use will occur for no more than 2 consecutive weeks unless otherwise approved based on demonstrated necessity. And for me, that was unclear whether the intent was to limit it to construction for 2 weeks or the use of the right-of-way. So I would just ask that this section be clarified because small cells will be long-term use in the right-of-way. So I'd like to thank the council and staff for the time and energy you've been putting into this effort. I've been to a couple of these meetings now, and I know you have more scheduled, and this is probably 50th on your list of most important things in the city, but it's my most important thing, and so I just thank you, and I'll answer any questions you might have.
Any questions? Great. Thank you, Steve. Appreciate it. Is there anyone else that would like to speak on this public hearing? No more? All right, we'll close the public hearing at this point. And just as a reminder, this is just the first reading. We'll be having a second reading on this, so there'll be additional opportunities to comment in that second meeting. And I think at this point, is there any discussion on council? Question for staff?
I have a couple questions now.
Yeah.
One being what Mr. Koon just asked about, the use will occur for no more than 2 consecutive weeks unless otherwise approved based on. Can you just clarify that?
Yeah, I think it's, and maybe we need to clarify this more, but basically the right-of-way use permit is really talking about that temporary use of the right-of-way, and I was just looking back at 12.02020 when a permit is required, and we have a requirement for construction, and then we have a requirement for the location of temporary, a right-of-way use permit is required for maintenance as defined in this chapter, use of the right-of-way for construction of facilities located outside of the right-of-way, and location of temporary debris containers in the right-of-way and other similar activities. So it's really for those very limited duration activities within the right-of-way, which is separate from the licensed utility franchise.
It's a different type of permit than what the small cell facilities would be receiving. So
It seems maybe it could be clarified a little bit because when I was reading that this afternoon, I was not clear either.
Yes, we will work on trying to make that more clear.
Okay. And then I just had another question. Ezra, I can't remember his last name, but Ezra from HBA came up. Could you just explain to me a situation that they might be talking about where those right-of-way fees get passed along to developers? And
yeah, a perfect example that I can think of is along Oregon Street. Zenport came in, they had to do road widening as a condition of their development project, and as part of that road widening project, they had to relocate the light poles. And they actually had to pay the cost of that relocation of the light pole.
but for their development, they wouldn't have needed to be moved.
Right. So that's sort of the example that comes foremost to my mind.
Okay, thank you.
Maybe a question, comment on that, because I am concerned because Ezra brought up the point about if you're doing a small infill project, say it's only 4 homes, and it's going to be a worst case scenario, $100,000 in relocation costs, having that all get passed on to the price of those homes when we're in a housing crunch seems, I don't know where the line is on that, but is there, I mean, are we doing anything like if we have area that's ripe for infill and there's an application for a small cell site, are we thinking ahead when we relocate that so we're avoiding those relocation?
Well, I guess small cells is new enough that I would say no.
Yeah,
We are not currently doing that.
I mean, the question is that in the thought process, so we avoid those types of situations because housing's already expensive enough as it is.
I mean, we certainly could. There are other things that you could do potentially, and it would be really location specific, where in certain circumstances, and we don't currently have a process for this, but I know some cities do, a fee in lieu of certain things, and so maybe, if they can't actually afford to do it as part of their project, there might be opportunities to do something like a fee in lieu rather than actually doing that relocation at that time or something. Is that what you're suggesting?
It's more of a comment, something to think about as we move forward.
I mean, I'm obviously sympathetic, but somebody's got to pay for it. Like, I don't know who the right somebody is, but it's not like whether it's the developer or the utility or the city, like somebody's got to pay. So it's got to.
Well, that was my thought. If the development wasn't happening, something wouldn't need moved.
Right.
So how is it fair to the utility to have to pay or the city to have to pay? Or,
Exactly.
yeah, I don't know. I will
It's a tough
ponder
question.
that some more.
Well, and I think our standards are clear that the city doesn't have to pay. The question is, and if it's a city project, we say, utility, you need to relocate this because we're doing a city project. But for private development projects, in some circumstances, and this is, my recommendation is that we need to get a little bit more detail and give you a little bit more information so we can.
It's a tough one, because in my mind, when I think about it, water, sewer, street lights, those are all things you have to do to build that house, right? The house has to have water, it has to have electrical, it has to have those things. Small cell site is not serving the properties around it per se. It's just a general service. So how does that fit in terms of distribution of those costs, right? And it's something to ponder.
But this didn't just apply to small cells, correct me if I'm wrong. Yeah, it could apply to other.
And my understanding in
services.
talking with Bob, and again, this is why we need to get a little bit more information, is that part of the problem is the time frames, and sometimes developers, their time frames are tighter, and so they pay for those relocation costs rather than going through a notice process and those types of things. But so we need to get more information on this aspect of the comments.
So I have a question. So both Karen and Steve brought up the request for additional 6 months. And you did a great job of providing a summary of the letters and responses to those questions that you heard in those letters. I'm intrigued by the 90-day extension piece, because one of the things I heard in your response, and excuse me, I don't mean this in a negative way, it was kind of wishy-washy at the end of, well, we might be able to extend, but the idea of the 90-day extension piece as needed gives more of a concrete solution. So I just, as a consideration.
And I think we would be open to that. I will note that in the proposed code language, 12.02020D, it says, unless otherwise provided in a specific permit, a permit shall automatically expire 90 days after. So, and we could potentially make that more clear in the code that is what is desired, but it's possible that through a permit process, they can say, we've got this much, this need, and that the permit could approve a longer extension.
Which would account for if they had that request up front, but may not account for, up front we thought we might do it in 90 and now we need more.
What we don't want is 100 right-of-way permits that sit open for a year. We want to know, we don't have the manpower to manage that tracking. And so, we want to know that what we've got is going to be built, we've got inspections planned and that kind of thing. But if we know a more specific time frame, then we could probably accommodate that.
Well, I like the idea of language that supports extensions as long as it's being actively worked, right? Like, you can't just have 90 days, do nothing, and then get an automatic extension. Like, you have to do something.
Well, and that's where my concern comes in, and why I would be more open to a longer extension, even a longer period on the commencement phase, if we had all of our design standards and everything in place by neighborhood. And what I don't want to see is a bunch of applications to reserve it at the current standards. And in the meantime, within that 6 month or 1 year time frame, we adopt new standards and we have a couple of installations that don't match everything else. So, and given the shot clocks that are in the FCC ruling, we need to get something on the books at this point, so we can't wait for all of that to get done. So I would be in favor of taking a look at that, leaving it at the 60 days, then taking a look at that once we have all our design standards in place.
60 days and then the 90 days.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone, I haven't heard anyone propose extending the 60 days to start.
Oh, maybe I missed that. Were you talking about the
You have to start within 60 days, and then you have to finish within 90 days after.
Oh, I
that.
got you. Yep.
I
That's
don't
okay.
think any of
Yeah.
us that I've heard have said anything about extending
the
the
90
60 days.
I misheard. Sorry about that.
kind of like the idea of a possible 90-day extension.
On the
As long
second
as-
phase.
On the second, on the 90 days with a possible 90-day extension, as long as the first 90 days, something's moving forward.
It has to be substantial progress.
And I would ask that question, what would be that process for extending it? We're throwing it out rather flippantly that we would just give another 90 days, but is there work that would need to be done? Would there be some examination? How much staff time goes into an extension?
I think we have enough guidelines to put together some language for you to look at the next hearing. Yeah.
And there are extensions that are, within the development code for extensions of site plans and subdivisions. And I could see something similar to that.
Right.
And it talks about, you've begun construction, or there's certain things that we can pull on that will provide some clarity, but.
And who would need to approve that? Is that just all city staff would approve an extension?
Staff, right.
Okay. It doesn't come to us or planning commission or anything like that?
No, correct. And the concern that I'm hearing from the carriers is primarily related to delays in that construction that are due to factors outside their own control, like power hookup. So we could specifically cite that as one of the criteria. That has to be extension not to exceed this length of time, substantial progress has been made, it's approved by the city engineer, and the delay is due to some factor outside the applicant's control.
And I think it should mirror current city processes where it's not, the applicant needs to bring to the city's attention that, something is being done. It's not the other way around. We don't hop in a truck and drive over there and see if somebody has a shovel and they're doing something. It's got to be applicant driven. You have to let us know, fill out a form, check off a box, whatever it is, so that the staff does not have that responsibility. They should not have that.
All right. Any other questions for staff? Great. I think we're done then, right? Awesome. And I'll get back to this.
Can I ask a point
Yes.
of clarification? So this is the first hearing, they don't take action, so they don't need to recommend changes. We're just going to present those changes at the next public hearing, correct?
Correct.
Thanks for that clarification, Julia. All right. Moving on, city manager report.
Council President and Council, I have one item, just as a reminder, we'll be switching gears in 2 nights in this room. My proposed budget for next fiscal year was released recently on May 3rd, and the Budget Committee will be meeting starting this Thursday evening in this room at 6 p.m., and we'll start going through that budget proposal and answering questions that the Budget Committee members may have about my proposed budget. We have 3 nights reserved, 3 successive Thursdays. We may or may not need those. Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. If we have to go more than 3, we'll go more than 3. I hear 5 from Councilor Young. At each of those meetings, there is an opportunity for the public to make comments about the proposed budget for next fiscal year at all of those meetings. And as a reminder, the Budget Committee is a 14-member board, of which the 7 sitting city councilors are a member of the Budget Committee, and then there's 7 citizen members that serve on the Budget Committee. And in the process, and again, this is just more education, the Budget Committee approves the budget sometime usually in May, and then it goes to council. It's scheduled to go to council on June 18th, and then you adopt the budget. And you have to, by Oregon budget law, adopt a budget by June 30th, correct? Correct. So we're excited about digging into the budget and answering your questions, and we're looking forward to it. So
Great.
that's all I had tonight. And you do have an executive session after this meeting, just as a reminder.
All right, we'll move on to council announcements. They get a pick. This is fun.
Start.
Couple things. Well, they are hot tonight. The Planning Commission meeting last Tuesday, we had a public hearing. It's actually a fairly complex one. It's a PUD, Planned Unit Development. It actually has several different components to it. There's a zoning change request. There's some text, two different text amendment to the zoning code requests, and then there's the PUD approval itself. So that was heard. There was a lot of good testimony and conversation among the commission. It has been continued over. It will continue next Tuesday at Planning Commission here in this room at 7. So if anyone interested in that, that's the Wildlife Crossing PUD. Additionally, next, they will also have 2 other public hearings next week. So Jeff the new commissioner, will dive right into the deep end of the pool with 3 hearings. Another one about an industrial development off of 12th and Sherwood Road, and then a sign variance for the new high school, I believe, is the 3rd one. So next Tuesday, if you're interested in those things. I had the pleasure of finishing my term in Citizens University last Thursday. And thank you, Joe, and the rest of your staff, all who did a great job over the 6 weeks. 7 weeks, 6 classes, yeah. So leading us through all of the different modules. It was great. I think everyone in the class learned a lot. And there was 3 youth in the class. There was a high school junior and 2 young men, 10 and 12. And they were all extremely impressive. The 2 boys I was blown away by their ability to sit there for 3 to 4 hours at a time, and not just sit there. They were engaged. Yeah, it was pretty cool to see. I also want to, on a personal note, Haley, is it?
Yes.
Haley, that presented tonight. I was very impressed by her. I think, a lot of us in these days, kids get a bad rap, this generation. It's probably true. It's been true every generation, I'm sure. But, people like that, and a lot of the other young men and women that come in front of council really prove that there's a lot of very outstanding young people. And so I think we have a lot to look forward to and with their leadership in the future. But I'm just blown away by her leadership and doing what she's doing. It's amazing. It's amazing. So kudos to her, and thank you, Sean, for bringing her.
All right, let's go down the line. I attended the Willamette Intake Facility meeting on April 29th. I think that was since our last meeting. Yeah, up in Beaverton, it's up in the Tualatin Valley Water District. It's a group of local cities and water districts that are involved in the Willamette Intake Facility. We passed our annual budget in this last meeting, and so we're doing some good work there. We meet 4 times a year, so if anyone's interested, I can provide some information on that. Tomorrow, the school district is having what they're calling a walk-in to help raise support for funding and education. Many other school districts in the area are actually doing a walk-out, where some of the staff are walking out, but I think very wisely our teachers have decided to go in a different direction and help keep our classes going. And so they're asking actually for some support if anybody's interested at our schools tomorrow. From 7:25 to I think 7:55, there's a Red for Ed kind of event that they're doing. So they're asking anybody who'd like to just really show support for our teachers and funding for education to show up at the schools. It's going to be at all the schools. Wear red and really just support our schools. As we've seen, we've all been big advocates for our schools here in Sherwood. It's very clearly the reason that my family moved here 7 years ago, along with our fantastic Sherwood Police Department. Quite literally, that is the reason we moved here. So I really want to show some support. We've got some bills that are in Salem right now that I won't go into that right now, what's happening today with those bills, but show some support for our teachers if you would. And also, just a reminder, 2 weeks from tonight is the election, May 21st election. There are a few things that are on the ballot that will affect Sherwood. We have 2 school board members, again, going back to school. Haley had mentioned Jessica Adamson, but also Sue Hecker, the longtime board members for the Sherwood School Board. again, we talk about unsung heroes in Sherwood. The work that the school board folks do is phenomenal. And if you had any idea how much work they're doing with the new high school, moving all of the schools, reallocating all the students based on that new high school being opened, dealing with budgets. I mean, it's an amazing amount. We met with them recently. And so please show your support on the ballot for them. And also another big one, and we've got members of TVFNR here tonight as well. They have a renewal levy that is on the ballot as well. And so please, just, Lieutenant Stamps came and spoke to us in March. This is a renewal levy. It's not going to increase rates. It's going to keep the same coverage that we received today, and it's critical. We talk about unsung heroes in this area. Again, our fire department are heroes, and so we really need to make sure that we fund them and that we keep the money going to them. It would be a terrible blow for us if we were to have to lessen the coverage that they provide. So please, I know this is one of those ballots that's not high profile or real exciting. There's no state or national races on this. Please do not overlook that ballot. Fill that in. Look at that levy for their TVFNR and get that in by 8 p.m. on May 21st, 2 weeks from tonight. I'm done. Thanks.
All right, so we've all received the announcements for the Meritorious Award Service for TVFNR, and Lieutenant Watson's in the audience. He and I sit on a board together that's being recognized at their award ceremony. So I'm really excited to be there and support you guys, but also to see the recognition, and thank you for that ahead of time. We didn't meet as the Sherwood Center, or Senior Center, Friends of the Sherwood Senior Center, but Maya did give me some updates. You'll be happy to know that Chef Dominic is back after his paternity leave. He had a new baby boy, but he's back and fixing all that great food. There's a new class that's going to be starting on May 16th. It'll be Thursdays at 1 p.m. It's a 6-week free diabetes self-management course. So many of you know diabetes is a big issue, and so the Senior Center is offering this class. And then a second class that's going to be offered, it's going to be a series that will be offered all year round about senior depression and mental health. So that will begin on June 10th at 1:15. And that's mental health is an issue that many are dealing with, but as our seniors age and the changes that they deal with, it's a real issue for them as well. And the library, we recognized Haley as she came up tonight and spoke and the great things that she's doing. We have a teen on the library board, Becky Mifflin, that's doing great things too. And I just want to recognize her and the work that she's doing to really promote the library in the high school. She created a survey that she's put out for the for the students at the high school to provide input about library services, and the board is acknowledging those comments and making changes for that. Also in the library, there's summer reading kicks off June 1st, and the storybook character Pete and Cat is coming to visit at 1:30. I'm not sure who Pete and Cat is, but it must be pretty important because they're going to be there. There's going to be photo ops, craft stories, and cake. The signups begin June 1st, and everyone gets to pick out a free book at registration, and adults and kids alike. And last year they had over 2,000 participants, so there's room to grow, but that's actually great participation. Let's see. Also, Adrienne wanted to thank all the local sponsors for their support with prizes and in-kind services. So WCCLS, Sherwood School District, Sherwood Center for the Arts, Helping Hands, the YMCA, State Library of Oregon, Friends of the Library, The Refuge, and Sherwood Ice Arena and Mud Puddles. It does take a village to get things done around the community. Let's see. There are still 10 tickets, I think. Actually, it might be down to 6 now, left for the Sherwood Police Foundation Gala that supports our police officers. It will be lots of fun. There's really cool auction items, and it's going to just be a great time. So you can buy those tickets online, and it's actually next Saturday, the 18th, 5:30 to 9 at the Arts Center. And I think, next chamber meeting is May 14th. Cruisin' volunteers are still being sought, so if you want to volunteer for Cruisin' Sherwood, which is 6 weeks away? Something like that. there's still opportunity there. And then there's nominations for the annual Spotlight in Sherwood Awards. So those can be, you can go online and nominate people for those awards. That's all I have.
Thank you, Renee. Kim?
Since the last council meeting, I attended the Police Advisory Board meeting as the liaison. The board continues to discuss traffic calming, and they spoke about some of their outcomes that evening, but were encouraged to go out and get a little bit more input from the community, encouraging some members who hadn't done their outreach yet to get that done so that we can have more people providing their input before the board comes to city council with some suggestions or not suggestions or whatever they decide to come to us with. So I missed the YMCA Board of Managers meeting, but I see there's a little bit of construction going on that property. Could it be the skate park? I haven't been up there to see what's going on, but I hear it's going well. I did attend last week a gathering at 503 on Cork. The Springs was offering, and they were telling a little bit about their independent living that they're building that's going to be opening springish, March or April. So there's quite the room was packed. The 503 was packed with people interested in hearing about their facility, and the owner, Fee Stubblefield, was there, and he was telling us about that. So that was a great event. I also attended the Vine and Sparrow grand opening ribbon cutting last week, which is the venue that took over where Bella Via was, and it's used as a church. It will be used as a rental space for weddings and whatnot. And congratulations to them for a new space. The owners of Symposium and others. It's just
2 symposiums and then Resonate, the church.
yeah. So Symposium and Resonate. So congratulations. That's all I have.
Great. Russell?
I had attended 2 meetings recently. One was the comprehensive plan meeting, which Gene Simpson from the Planning Commission also serves on, and a bunch of community members and staff. And so this was one of the themes we talked about was thriving and diversified economy. And there were one of the questions. There was a slide put up by the consultant. Some of the questions were, what do you believe the city's role is in keeping businesses in the city? What do you think the city's role is in attracting new businesses to the city? What should the city be focusing on? And so I have 4 pages of notes. The citizens just kept it coming. So I wrote it all down. And a lot of their concerns are things that as a council we are thinking. We are concerned with some of our goals tied directly into that, and as we head into the new budget cycle, and we start to address some of those needs that will hopefully, and this is a 2-year process. We have another year and 10 months of this process. So, and they will be in and out of the community this summer, getting feedback on various parts of the comprehensive plan. They'll be at Robin Hood and all those things that they normally do. Also, I attended the Parks Board meeting. That was on Monday night, but last week I had a chance to go with our Public Works Director, Craig Sheldon, and Kristen Schweitzer, our Community Services Director, on a tour of all the parks with MIG, the consultant. Before that, actually, I emailed Craig and said, hey, can I come over and take a tour of Public Works? And he's like, yeah, come on over. So I spent like 40 minutes with Craig, and I'm so impressed. Oh my gosh. We were going down this long hallway in Public Works, and I don't know if they're watching or not, but he was commenting on the quality of the buff job on the tile. And of course, it looked like you could eat off of it. He said, no. We walked way to the end, and he said, now look way down there. See that rough mark right there? And I'm like, oh my gosh. I mean, the place is like immaculate. And that's the Public Works building. Everything in the yard is all organized, which made complete sense when we went to the parks. And we went to all the parks. We stood in all the parks. Well, we didn't get out. We waved at Rudy Olson, Gas Pump Park. But we went to all the other parks, walked around, and 2 things struck me. First of all, the city and staff, Public Works, they do an amazing job of taking care of our parks. I mean, the consultants again and again and again. I mean, they just wanted to stay up on top at Snyder Park, and just like let's just stop right now. This is perfect. It was a perfect day. It was like 72 degrees. And so they do a fantastic job. I want to make sure everybody knows that. They should be commended. It's amazing what they do. Have a high quality of park. But they also commented on, we are not overly manicured. You know, we have a lot of natural spaces, and we have, something they commented on is we have a lot of potential for very natural vegetative corridors, you know, like behind the senior center and where the Cedar Creek Trail goes along, and all of these kinds of, we have this great pocket. We are not paved from one end to the other. We are not landlocked. We have this great, great assets, great features in the city of Sherwood. And I think as the Parks Board starts into the Parks Master Plan, which is what the kickoff was last night, the consultant is going to be out and talking, they're going to do a full parks inventory, every piece of equipment, every feature, every amenity, everything we have. Here's what you've got. Here's where you could spread things out. Here's where you might, based on feedback from stakeholders and the public and staff and council and planning commission, based on that feedback, they're going to put together a master plan that says, hey, here's what it could be. Here's what we could do. Here's some thoughts. Here's some direction. They just finished one for West Lynn that was just amazing. They did an amazing job on that. So that is what's happening right now. Oh, I want to point out also that Mr. Steve Munsterman, who is in the back of the room there, was appointed to the Parks Board. He was at our meeting last night. And he comes with just a little bit of experience. I'm going to gloat on you, Steve. Is that okay? He's like, whatever. So 30 years in public works at the city of Wilsonville, 20 years on their budget committee. And he's a resident. Isn't that wonderful? Yeah, what a great amount of knowledge he's going to. Right, Steve? Big things. He's like, no comment. So that's it. That's all I got.
So, Russell, I did want to also mention, too, because I know that you were part of the you were the liaison to the Parks Board when the design for the Pioneer Park went in, and so my family was there just within the last week or so.
After the new equipment went in?
Yes, 3 separate citizens commented on how appreciative they were of that park and how great it is and how their kids are absolutely loving that park, and my kids are blown away too. And speaking of the natural surrounding, the trees in that park are fantastic, and the park is that was one of the concerns that one of the citizens had about when they heard that they were going to put in a new park. They said, I hope they don't do anything to the trees. And
2 things about that park. It's our only park right now that has an ADA compliant swing.
Yes.
Did you see that? And the other thing is, did you walk over to that big, huge root ball?
It's fantastic.
Okay, so the consultants could not, they had to all go touch it, and they had to sit by it. They had to take pictures in front of it. They were amazed by this root ball. It's about like 8 feet tall.
Yeah,
so.
there was about a 10-year-old, 12-year-old boy just sitting right in the tree with his book.
Yes,
yeah.
It's an amazing
He looked as happy as can be. Yeah, so just wanted to pass that along. That we had some people who are really, really thrilled that park is getting some love, and that part of the city is not being overlooked. They were very happy about that park.
Would you like to speak?
I got a few things. Thank you. I didn't, since the last meeting, I did not have a school board meeting. We did, I think Sean alluded to it, we had a joint work session with the school board, which went great. I'm really happy that we're doing those again and partnering with the schools to make sure as we move forward into the future, when we talk about growth and schools and capacity and all that things, all those types of things that we're working together. We also talked to them a little bit about Safe Routes to School, which is a program where you can get funding from various areas, state, federal, local, to improve safety around our schools for our students that walk and bike into our school district. So it was really fun having that meeting. And a plug on Sean, you brought this up too, we have this election. Jessica and Sue do a great job on the board. They're running unopposed, I believe, so they're shoo-ins, but please do vote for them. I did have a meeting of the Historical Society. They are gearing up for the Concert in the Park series. For those of you don't know, they run the beer concessions for that, and it's their major fundraiser. So anyone out there in TV land watching this, if you own a company that sells or makes beer, they're looking for donors right now, so feel free to reach out. I also attended, this was a while ago, but I don't think I mentioned it last time, but I attended an emergency meeting of the Metro mayors. Keith was out of town, so he asked me to attend. And the subject of the meeting was Metro is looking at doing a bond in 2020, major transportation bond to do transportation projects all throughout the metro area, so mainly focused on roads. It's kind of, there's a separate project going on along with the Southwest Corridor, which is the light rail coming out to the Bridgeport Mall. Anyways, the subject of that meeting was advocating for which corridors are going to get designated as priority for funding under those bonds. So we had a lot of representation there from this side of Washington County, which was great. So we're hoping that we can get monies allocated for 99 West, which I think all of us agree is congested. It was amazing. Metro had not identified that as a major congestion problem, which was really surprising to a lot of the folks in the room. We're also going to be convening some meetings of Tigard, Tualatin, King City, Sherwood. Am I missing anything, Julia? ODOT and Washington County is a group to start advocating for getting improvements to 99 West, because shockingly, really there's no one talking about that right now. What are the plans? What are we going to do with 90? What's the long-term plans 20, 30 years down the road for that corridor? Because it is a major hub, and we have a lot of traffic that comes out of Washington or Yamhill County that's coming up through there and using that today to get to our employment centers. On the fun side, I also attended the Vine and Sparrow grand opening. That was a great event. I'm very happy to see that building back in use, and it's I believe it's the second Friends Church built in Sherwood originally, if I understand the history. It's been around for quite a long time, but it's great to see it get some use and move forward, and I think the folks from Symposium will do a great job utilizing that space. Also, covering for the mayor again, I got to go to the court, speak at the coronation of the Maid Marian Court. That was a lot of fun for me. Having grown up in this area since about 1976, the Robin Hood Festival has been kind of a staple for our family, been to it many times, so it was kind of fun. I never thought in a million years when I was in high school I'd be speaking at a coronation event for the Robin Hood Festival, but that was pretty cool. Yes, they're coming to the meeting on June 4th, so they're going to present the new court. But they did a great job, and we got a great bunch of kids on the court this year. What else? Am I missing anything? I think that's it. We'll call it good. Anything else from anybody? All right. Well, we will adjourn the meeting and go into executive session.